Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very fortunate to have Julie Cole as our facilitator for our webinar today. Julie is the co-founding vice president of award-winning children's label manufacturer Mabels Labels. I'm sure many of you have heard of them as they are a proud partner of ours. She has helped her company bring their product to a worldwide market, gain media recognition, and win countless entrepreneur awards. She is a regular television contributor, an influential and syndicated blogger, and a mother of 6. Her first lives with autism, and we will be focusing on that parenting journey today. If at any time you have any questions, please feel free to use both the Q&A and the chat function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll make sure that we get these addressed. Over to you, Julie.
Oh, thank you, Christy. And hey, everyone, thanks for having me. So yeah, like Christy said, anytime you have questions or comments, please just chime in. We just want to make this like fun and casual and conversational. And, I'm happy to respond to anything. I am an open book. I'll just give you a little bit of a background to kind of tell you our story. And it's kind of why Mabels Labels started too. I also have to laugh because yes, I have 6 kids, but Victoria Sobek, who started Kids and Company, has got me beat by 2. She's got 8 kids. And now she's doing the grandmother thing. I'm so jealous. My time will come. My time will come. So yeah, look, let me just start at the beginning. My 6 children now are ages 10, this gets tricky, 10, 13, 14, 16, no, 17, 19 and 20. That's right. It seems to change every day. Actually, I have a birthday next week and then one the week after, and then I'm going to relearn all their birthdays. So it's my oldest child who got diagnosed with autism. And so at the time I was actually working as a lawyer. I like to say I'm a recovered lawyer. And Mabels Labels kind of started for a couple of reasons. One was there was a product missing from the market. As you mamas know, you're out there and you're like trying to label your stuff, especially now in these COVID-y germy times. We don't want germy mix-ups with things. So we had a good product idea. And then also at that time, my son, Mac, got diagnosed with autism. And it was a busy time for me because he was a freshly minted 3-year-old with a nice shiny new diagnosis. I had a 20-month-old with a broken arm, and I had a newborn daughter as well. Good times, let me tell you. And, I think, so wanting to leave the traditional workforce, having a good product idea, that's what made Mabels Labels come about. And I can tell you this, like, honestly, he's done, as Mabels has done so well, like we're 17 years old now, and my son is 20 years old now. And we've accomplished so much with the company, but we've also accomplished so much with my son. So he's 20 years old. He is just finished up second year university at the University of Guelph. He has lots of friends. He loves video games. He has his driver's license. He goes down to Queen's University to party every St. Patty's Day. He plays hockey. He's got a black belt in Taekwondo. He's a wonderful big brother. He's a wonderful son. There's so many great things about this kid. Now, he did work very hard. We all worked really hard, and we also spent a lot of money. I'm not going to lie, and we will talk about that more later on. So as Mabels has experienced a lot of success, the reason kind of behind it, which is my son, has also had a lot of success and a lot of hard work. And I will also talk a little bit about how it doesn't really go away. The autism doesn't go away. I once said to him, I was like, hey, do you feel like you've kind of outgrown it? And he's like, oh, no, I'm just better at faking that I don't have it. And I'm like, what? Anyway, another story for a little later in the conversation. So let's go back to the time then when he was 3, and we were noticing something was up with him. We didn't know what, because everything seemed to be going fine. He was kind of 18 months old and he didn't have enough words. That was the only thing we were like, why isn't he kind of got the words? They're supposed to have some words at 18 months old, but everything else was really good. He was like kind of walking at 11, 12 months. The only one thing that was a little bit weird that we only considered afterwards was he had this funny stim with his eye. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know it was a stim. When he was a baby, we would call it he sees dead people, because he'd do this like weird peripheral vision thing. So we didn't think anything of that. It was the language. Now, unfortunately for him, there's a bit of a red herring because he had a bit of a hearing issue. So once we got the ear tubes put in and he did a lot of speech therapy, the speech therapist was like, oh yeah, the language is going to come on like a house on fire now. And it didn't. It didn't at all. And then as time was passing, we were noticing other skills that either weren't there or seemed to be disappearing. It was getting scary. Like it was getting to the point I'm like, what, every day this kid's kind of drifting further and further away from us. And so then, I talked to the speech therapist. I'm like, what do you think about this autism thing? She's like, I'm not seeing it, but it's like, okay. Eventually, though, it was my mother and my mother-in-law sat me down and they were like, we're really concerned. We think there's something very developmental going on here. That's, and we know you're run ragged. You're about to have a newborn baby tomorrow. Like it was crazy times. Anyway, I set up an appointment with a pediatric developmental pediatrician with a different speech pathologist and a neuropsychologist, and we went through a week of going through different exercises, and he ended up with the diagnosis for autism. And it's so funny because I remember at the time I was like, oh, it's okay, are we sure it's not just semantic pragmatic disorder? Suddenly I was like excited about diagnoses that I didn't believe to be true, but I was like, I wouldn't mind that. I don't mind that so much. So my sister explains it, like I kind of went through like a moment of denial. I went through a couple days of grieving, like, cause I was like, well, what does this mean? Like, what does this mean for his life? Like, I love him, but I do want to eventually have all my children grow up and leave my home. I do want to experience emptiness syndrome. And I just thought, like, what does it mean for him? Like, will he, I really value relationships and social experiences. This is going to be an area of deficit for him. Like, how is that? And so you're just full of worry. You guys know, like, you're full of worry. So I had about a couple of days of probably like grieving the kid I thought I had. And then I, realized I walked out of the doctor's office with the same kid I walked in with, and I love him still the same. So I went from a moment of denial, 2 days of grief to, okay, right, now what are we gonna do about this? We gotta get everybody on board and start a program for this little guy. And so that's what we did. We started, like, I'm a believer, everybody has different things that work for them. I believe in like trying everything and seeing what works. For us, ABA IBI really worked. He was a huge responder. So we started a program, and I basically turned my basement into a therapy center and had different therapists coming in, all day, and working hard with my little guy. And yeah, he really did respond. I was really a firm believer of not letting him have sort of any dead time. So, I remember my father-in-law saying, oh, just leave him alone. He's just playing with blocks. I'm like, no, he's not playing with blocks. He's lining blocks up and he's like perseverating on them. So that's not acceptable to me. So whatever you guys do, like no judgment, whatever. But for me, I was like, no dead zoning it, no just using like, can't put him in timeout because that was like a gift to him. Oh, I get to be alone to do whatever I want. So you have to kind of change everything up, as you may have noticed. So we did the ABA, and that worked very well for him. As I said, huge responder. Everyone in our family got trained in ABA, all the aunts and uncles and all the grandparents. They also all had to know what was on Mac's program so that they knew what our goals were and what we were targeting. And then when something moved to maintenance, they would know to revisit it once in a while. And, it's funny because I mentioned my father-in-law, and he kind of thought I was a bit of a crazy mama, and I was taking it a little too serious. And he was a bit like, he'll be fine, just stop fussing over him. And once Max started ABA, and I remember I sent my father-in-law for ABA training, and they all had required reading. I was like, everyone's on board. You're either on my team or you're out, baby. So I remember sending my father-in-law for a day-long training for ABA, and he came back, and I said to him, now, do you understand Mac better? Do you feel like you do? And he said something that will always stick with me. And it was probably one of the sweetest things somebody has ever said to me. And he said, I don't know that I understand Mac better, but I certainly understand you better. And I'm on board, and we are going to start helping financially contribute to paying for his therapy. And I was like, oh, this is the support I need. So any of you guys who were out there in those early days, try things that might work, try anything and everything. Try to get your family on board. Let them know your expectations. They will come around. Give them like the things to read, and also make sure that you are surrounded by other parents. I mean, I'm probably like, what is it, preaching the converted? You're here coming to this webinar to learn from another parent and to share with another parent. So you probably get it. But like in my day, there was no Facebook, there were no online groups. Like it was tough times. It was pretty isolating. And I don't know if it's different now so much, but I very much felt like when I got the diagnosis, they're like, here you go, don't hit yourself with the door on the way out. I'm like, now what do I do with this, right? What do I do with this diagnosis? Nobody really guided me. And I found I went to there was a support group, a local support group for parents. And that's where I kind of got all the information I needed. And I swear, like the autism parents, that community is so great. There's Facebook groups in every community. They'll tell you about what therapy centers they like, they'll recommend. So definitely check in with your local parents group or your Autism Ontario, or if there's some therapy centers nearby, get parent recommendations, what they think, as people have different philosophies around teaching and that sort of thing, and make sure it's aligned, and get to reading. But yeah, and do find some support online. Honestly, I just need to, for this moment, honor you parents who are home right now with kids with autism, and they're not going to their therapy, they're not going to their speech. You're at this 24/7. I know many of them don't sleep or have really crazy sleep schedules. I know their stims are driving you crazy right now. I know you're not getting a break. I don't know how you're doing it. I just need to tell you, I see you and I honor you, because I think back, if this was like 15 years ago and I had all those babies and I was dealing with Mac's program and I didn't have him doing therapy for a 2-hour session in the morning, a 2-hour session in the afternoon, somebody, another adult helping me, like you're doing it all. I can't even imagine. You're probably trying to homeschool other kids. You might be trying to work from home, and then you have your child with autism that you're trying to provide support to. You must be going crazy. So I just needed to give you a moment that I don't know how you're doing it. I don't know how we would have done it, but I guess just maybe see that there's an end. Make sure that, you're connecting with other parents online, and getting the support you need. Make sure if you have a spouse that they're pulling their weight, you're sitting down, communicating regularly about, division of labor. Often, I'm not going to lie, we know this stuff falls on mom. We know that even if you're both working, that the emotional and the caregiving piece, we just know this statistically is still falling on mom. So make sure that you're getting support from dad, and dad is stepping up. If you're on your own doing this, even more power to you. Hopefully you've got some grandparents involved or some support. It's especially tricky in these times, of course, with the social isolation, but make sure you're also taking care of your mental health, because if mama goes down, it's no good for anyone. Okay, so there we were. We started Mac's program. He started school. I sent him to school half days for a while. I sent him with a therapist. I sent him with a therapist everywhere because I wanted him to get the most out of every social opportunity. Like even when he went to soccer or gymnastics, I always had somebody there to help shape the behavior, and use everything as a teachable moment. That was extreme, and I went into extreme debt doing this. And that's my other piece of advice. Like, you beg, borrow, or steal. If you need to remortgage your house, like I just think, get them the therapy now, do the work now, so that one day they will leave your house and be a taxpayer and have a partner and everything. Like, you want to invest in them now. And it drives me crazy when the government doesn't help support these guys, because if they're not doing it now, they're going to have to do it later. So why don't we do the right thing by them now? And of course, parents are also busy advocating and going after government funding. So we have to do all the things. We have to be, now our children's therapists, their teachers, their parents. We have to get no sleep. And we also have to be politically active. It is a raw end of the deal, parents. I am hearing you and feeling you on that. I thought I'd also maybe share some of the things that I did in the early days that really worked and helped Mac. It might sound, you're probably gonna think I'm a little bit mean, but I'm really not. Okay, maybe a little bit. But I really just felt very strongly that um, I needed to do everything I could to help shape his behaviors so that he would have good experiences socially. And like I said, of course, there are still things about him, like his the one thing that I say that we still struggle with is his executive functioning. So yeah, he's away at university, he lives on campus, you know, blah blah, like great. But I have him on a reduced course load. He's doing four courses instead of five. We definitely are doing some accommodations so he can write his exams in a separate area. He has a little bit more time. I make sure he has access to student note takers so that he can watch the lecture and pay attention to that and not just be scribing the whole time, so he can get notes afterwards. There are things that can be done for our guys, and there are many, many, many kids on campus using these services. So as long as they go off to college or university with their diagnosis, you can get these accommodations made. The executive functioning, again, organization, time management, not his happy place, not the best spot for him. You know, he is likely to want to, his gaming computer is not at university, because I know he'd be gaming with his pals all night. So, and he knows too that that's, you know, good choice not to have it there, not to tempt him. So I actually have him still working with an executive functioning coach. So they Skype every week and they figure out what projects he has coming up. They chunk out when he's going to do research, when he's going to have a rough draft ready for her to have a look at, that sort of thing. So we do, and we make sure he's scheduling time to go to the gym, doing healthy things, all that stuff. So it doesn't go away, but boy, it does get easier if you do like a lot of the work when they're young. But yeah, it's he can manage it. He can manage it with our support from home and the support of Cheryl, our executive functioning coach. So some of the things that I did when he was young, so for me, the social stuff was really important. Like the academic stuff, like these kids are smart. Just because autism, there's no learning disability diagnosis in with autism. These kids are smart. And I always said, if my kid wasn't learning, that wasn't his problem. That was our problem. We had to teach him in a new way that he could learn, because we know he can learn. So if he's not learning, that's on us to change things up, find a style of learning that works for him, because we know he can do it. The social stuff, though, was very important to me. And I will say that a couple little things when he was small. So I remember the first time he got a birthday invitation from a kid who I didn't know the mother. And that to me was such a meaningful moment. He came home with this little birthday invitation from a kid named Jonathan in kindergarten. And I was like, I don't know Jonathan's mother. Jonathan was allowed to invite 6 kids, and Mac was one of them. I cried and I sobbed, and I posted that invitation in Mac's baby book, and I still saw him cry over it. To me, that was a really meaningful moment. And I made sure I did a few things around Mac's social stuff when he was young. First of all, I made him have the best birthday parties ever. I made it the kind of birthday party that every kid talked about and wanted to be at. Yes, I did. I made sure if Mac did get a birthday invitation, we made a really big deal about that child. We got a great gift. We made it super special, because I wanted Mac getting invited to things so that he could have these social opportunities and these experiences and get the sense of how good it feels to be included socially. I would have play dates, and they would be super fun so that kids would want to go to Mac's house. And I would be the fun mom. All the other moms, we'd go to the park and they're like sitting around drinking their coffees. I'd be like, okay, let's play grounders, but albeit, and I'm going to chase all you little kids. All the kids be like, Julie, get me. I couldn't sit. I had to play and be the fun mom, because I wanted these kids to interact with Mac and give them these social opportunities. So if you can try and be the fun mom and create social opportunities for your kids, that is awesome. I also tell parents at school, well, I told them what my expectations are, you know. I'd be like, hey, not sure if you're aware, Mac's on spectrum. Anytime, if you could encourage your child to include him, if your kid wants to come for a play date, or, you know, even if you want to have Mac for a play date, I can come facilitate it. Like, I just told people what my expectations were. I was unapologetic about it. And you know what? So many parents were awesome. They'd be like, hey, Julie, I was doing some reading about it. Or, hey, Julie, so-and-so came home and said Mac did a really good job sitting in circle today. Like, we're like every other parent. We want to hear good stuff about our kids, right? So I just made sure I communicated with teachers. I found the teachers were awesome. I found the school accommodating, and mostly it was because they didn't want to see my ugly mug down at the office every day. And honestly, it is a case of the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You need to go in there, you need to advocate. It's a full-time job. My kid always had an EA. He was probably, his needs were maybe even lower than other kids, but they did not want me going in every day and being like, you need to support my kid. This is like, I do the Education Act. I would throw like things from the Education Act at them. So be that mom, be that guy, be that annoying, be that squeaky wheel. Okay, so that would be like my social birthday party stuff. I also find, like, I don't know if your kid has any things like Mac, it was almost like an autism thing. Well, it was, he hated losing. And sometimes this is almost like I don't know why our guys have such a hard time with losing. I mean, most kids do. I don't like to lose either. I get it. But like, it was like, he hated losing. Like, to the point where, I mean, it would be like waterworks and inappropriate behavior and all that jazz. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to make friends and influence people if you're in grade 4 and you're crying when you lose at what time is it, Mr. Wolf, you know? So I'm like, we need to shape this behavior up. So I spent a lot of time playing games with him and making him lose. It's true. And you know what? We got to the point where I'd be like, okay, bud, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play this game. And if I win, I want you to take a few deep breaths. If you feel like you're going to cry, excuse yourself to go to the bathroom, pull yourself together, and then come back. It got to the point where he could lose, and then he could take a deep breath and be like, good game, mom. Would you like to play again? And I'd be like, oh, I'd love to play again. I love how you did that. You did such a good job. High five, boop, boop. And then he'd win. Or then he'd lose, whatever. But I just really, like, him being a sore loser, I thought was really going to get in the way of him socially, and I didn't want him kind of getting made fun of. So I found, like, if he had a quirky little deficit that might interfere with those things, I really worked on them. They were part of the program. And also, like, keep in mind, he had lots of siblings, so they kind of helped him get used to like losing in games and all that social stuff too. Let's see, what else would I do? I've got a little list here. Oh, autopsying social situations. This was good for all the kids. So doing an autopsy in a social situation. So basically, like, if we went to a picnic or we had the cousins over, if we had a party, you know, afterwards I'd be like, okay, bud, so what went well, even better if. And we talk about, okay, well, you know, when they're having lunch, everybody sat nicely and did this and whatever. What didn't go so well? You can be like, oh, well, when that kid said this, I responded this way. That sort of thing. So that was an opportunity for us all just to sit and share and talk about the good stuff. And then also, before we would go to an event, I would talk to the kids about what the expectations are. And that was one of kind of the good things about, like, a lot of people are like, oh my God, you have a kid with autism and then you had 5 more. And I'm like, okay, legit, I had 2 before he had a diagnosis. So wasn't all brave there. And then part of me was like, I've learned so much. Like, I probably should have another kid. Now I do have my 6th guy. He is not on spectrum, but he does have ADD, ADHD, LD, and giftedness. So he's got a whole different learning profile, but it's so different. They're so different. I don't know if you have kids, let me know in the comments too, and then Christy can chime in. Do you have kids, like just one child on spectrum? Do you have kids with other different learning profiles? You do get a lot of siblings that have giftedness with a child with autism. It's interesting. It's interesting how all of these little genetics come together. So yeah, we would autopsy the situation. I would prepare them. If we're going to a movie, what does it look like? What does it sound like? Mac had a hard time going to movies, so I would just break it down into chunks. So he, and a lot of kids, for some reason, with the credits, do you have a kid who has a thing with the credits? So weird, right? So with Mac, it would be, okay, we did a movie night at home. We had popcorn. We made it look like a movie. The next time I would just walk into the theater with him. Next, we'd stand at the back for the opening credits. Next, we'd walk it. And eventually he could watch a movie and love a movie. But a lot of these things, it is breaking it down into small, manageable chunks. Oh yeah, I have this one. I say, teach your kid not to be boring. So here's the thing. like, you know how sometimes like they perseverate and just talk about the stuff that interests them? Yeah, that can be super boring, right? So we did a lot of double sessions with Mac where he would work with a neurotypical cousin or sibling or friend, and we would kind of facilitate conversations. And that's because, you know, Mac would like for a while just talk about Thomas the Tank Engine. And then for a while, just talk about, I can't remember what his next thing was, dinosaurs, maybe, solar system. I don't know. What are your kids on to? You know, the usual. Anyway, so we would say to him, like, bud, when you see their eyes kind of glossing over, they're tired of hearing about Thomas. It's time to shift this up. It's time to be like, did you watch anything on TV last night? What are you interested in? What do you like to play with? So, like, enough talking about your boring interests. Like, I know it's interesting to you, but I had no problem being like, that's boring to other people. So you need to stop. You need to stop. You need to ask them what interests theirs are. So we taught that skill. Also, kind of in the same vein, I would also try and interest him in activities that were other kids were really interested in at the time. So, like, you know, he may have not been that interested in Pokemon, but I was like, dude, we're getting Pokemon cards. Let's get Pokemon cards. Let's start playing Pokemon. This is what all the friends at school are doing, or, you know, whatever is kind of cool at the moment. Whether it was Webkins, I think for him, whatever they're Skylanders, whatever the kids are playing, get them playing the same stuff so they have things to talk about, so they have something in common. So I can remember just like, you know, my friends' kids begging them for certain toys or whatever. I'd be like, okay, let me make notes so I can go buy that for Mac. So that's what I did. And also like the keeping him cool. Like, you know, I would be like, what are the kids wearing? Oh, okay, good. They're wearing Converse right now. Mac, we're going to buy Converse. Oh, they're wearing their jeans this way. They're wearing their hats backwards. Whatever it was, I would try and dress him cool and keep him cool. And luckily also with the siblings, they did the same thing. They always were like, no, Mac, that's not cool. That's not appropriate, whatever. And especially as teenagers, you know, even when like, you know, girl stuff would come up or whatever, they would very much help shape the behavior and have great conversations with him about, you know, how to, you know, talk to a girl or whatever. It's awesome, actually. It's so much fun. And in a way, like having all these siblings has made it easier because he has been socialized all the time. He always shared a room. And it always made me have to have the same expectations for him. I'm like, everybody else clears their plate. Guess what, buddy? No get out of jail free card for you. Clear your plate. So it helped kind of keep the expectations pretty high, I think. And also, I felt like with all my ABA training, it helped me be a better parent to all my neurotypicals too. Just, you know, set the expectations, tell them what it is, and then follow through, right? Like that's about. Um, yeah, I tried to with the stims, if he had any. He wasn't a big stim guy. I'm not sure if your guys are big stimmers. He wasn't a big stim guy. He had a couple of little things. And if they were kind of like goofy looking, I would try to redirect to something that was a little more subtle. So I was actually able to do zero stim with him. It wasn't a huge thing for him, but if you have a kid who's like a super stimmer, if you can try to redirect it to something that doesn't look as, you know, like you don't want to, you know, I didn't want him being, you know, the flapping, whatever. If your kid flaps, like whatever, kids get it. But I just tried to redirect to things that maybe were a little bit more socially appropriate, might not alienate him socially. But you know, kids are pretty good at school. Again, I trained the friends and had the other moms on board with training their own kids, that sort of thing. So yeah, those were kind of like the things that I did socially for him. So I just, you know what, go big on the therapy was my thing. Keep the expectations high. I also, you know, realized with all the kids, they respond so much better to positive feedback than negative feedback. So I tried to do like 5-to-1. I'd be like, nice sitting, buddy. If he could only sit for a minute in circle, like I would tell the teacher at 30 seconds, start complimenting the behavior, start giving him a high five, pull him out of circle, go for a walk. Don't pull him out of circle when he's been behaving like he can't sit there anymore. Catch him being good. And I had that sign on my fridge, catch him being good. So catch him before the behavior declines, because if the behavior declines and then they get the reward, they learn that they get rewarded for the bad behavior instead of catching them in the good behavior. You know what I'm saying? anyway, those are just some of my tips and tricks around how we've gotten through. I don't know if Christy's out there and people are commenting or questioning or telling me I'm a big meanie mama. It's
No,
okay. It won't be the
no.
first time I heard it. But Christy, yeah, is there any comments? What are people saying? Is
So
anybody
we don't have any questions right now
okay?
from our attendees, but feel free to chime in, anyone who does. But I did have a few things that I thought of while you were chatting, and just to fill everyone in so they know about my experience, my younger brother
Yeah.
lives with autism as well. He's 25 now, so sort of similar to your son in the journey. But some of the things that you mentioned, I think, are quite interesting, and the biggest one being, how did you talk to him about his diagnosis and his
Yeah.
understanding? For our family, for whatever reason, we actually haven't even really bridged that yet.
Right.
And I can't imagine, dealing with that when they're in the preschool level or something like that. So I think maybe expanding on that might be useful.
That's a brilliant question. So okay, so for us, it didn't go as planned. Like I had a plan for it, and actually, kind of outing a kid to himself or herself is a program, and it can take a year. You know, you kind of set up the everyone's different and blah blah blah. And I
Mhm.
didn't feel like we really had to out him to his siblings. Like they were born after him, they kind of just knew. But it was funny because so we were kind of going to go through this like kind of program of outing him. And the thing was, I always talk in terms of such a funny little expression, but I'll just be like, oh, there's something up with that kid. So like if the kids are like, oh, this kid at school keeps licking her fingers, I don't know what, I'll be like, well, you know what, okay, maybe you think it's a bit gross, but there's probably something up with the kid. So just be patient. Don't make a big deal of it. What can you do to be helping that kid? And I was with Mac and we were on our way to his Cubs. And there was this kid in Cubs who was, something was off. And the kid she'd always try and hug him and like kind of be a little socially inappropriate, whatever. And we were on our way and he was like, oh, so-and-so is going to do this, whatever. I was like, dude, we know something's up with her. So, just try to be a good friend and I'm doing the tips. And then he's like, oh, by the way, mom, what's up with me? And I was like, well, funny you should ask. You have something called autism. Do you know anyone else with autism? And he's like, well, yeah, Johnny is autism, but Johnny is a friend of ours who is a little further along on the spectrum. He's like highly stimmed. He's nonverbal. So kind of, the spectrum's wide range. So he was like, Johnny, and I was like, that's right. And everybody's different on the spectrum. And this is why you worked so hard with Beth and so hard with Anne at Missing Links, and why, we've been, when you would hear all the siblings out swimming, you were in the basement doing work, like, and he was like, oh, that explains it. Okay. Anyway, and the conversation moved on. And so then that was just done. And then it was just part of, things. So it was, I had this grand plan, I was so organized with his coming out. And then he just asked what was up with him.
How
So
old was he?
I'm gonna say he was like 10 or 11. Yeah, so I mean he was pretty with it to be, yeah, to have gotten like at that point to have asked that question. Like obviously there was some self-awareness there. And he knew that he did things a little bit differently, and he saw his siblings, and he'd see, sometimes they were outstripping him in some skills or whatever, getting ahead of him. And things like they were like little therapists. Like I'm so interested to hear from you, Christy, more about this, because like Posey, so my daughter Posey's 15 months younger than him. And
Mhm.
if you guys have ever watched Atypical, she is that sister. Like it's insane. She looks like the sister, she talks like the sister. I literally had a friend call say, has Posey moved to LA to become an actor, and is she in this show called Atypical? And it's so funny because even the way they treat the brother, like there's this one episode, I was talking about this yesterday actually. There's this one episode where the sister sees the brother in the high school, they're in high school, right, in the hallway. She's like, oh God, why do you have to be so annoying? Why do you have to do that? And oh, and by the way, if you don't have anyone to sit with at lunch, I'll be over at that table with my friends. Come join me. And I was like, that's exactly it. Why do you have to be so annoying, Mimra? But then I'm here to support you. And that's kind of how the sibling relationship seems to work, which is pretty cute. And siblings do have a unique relationship. I always thought it was awesome that Mac had a lot of siblings. I didn't have the kids so that he would have a lot of siblings, but I thought, I don't know what his future looks like. And I felt like if there is care required, it is kind of cool that he has a lot of people to share in that responsibility, and to so many people who would love him and have him for Christmas dinner and whatever. I mean, again, that's not why. I just thought it would have been a nice outcome when I didn't know, again, without a crystal ball. So yeah, Christy, I know my kids actually were in a support group for siblings of kids with autism back in the day. And I don't know if siblings are supported the same way, or if they're getting, because there's another episode of Atypical where, the parents are there watching Casey, that's the sister. She's a track star and she's about to do a big race. And then brother has an episode and he pulls the girl's hair. And so of course parents have to deal with that, and they miss Casey's race. And, the point of the episode is Casey's like, really? Again, like you guys are never there for me because you're so involved with him. And I feel like, I'm sure all of the siblings feel that way at times, but like I always say to mine, like, you all require different things, and I don't treat you the same because you're not the same. And to be treating you the same would be to treat you with inequality. Yes, somebody else's needs are more right now, and that's what I'm doing. And when your needs are more, it's okay. And I don't feel any parent guilt. I always say I gave up mommy guilt 4 kids ago. And yeah. Shoot, excuse me. Yeah, I'd be interested, Christy, to hear your sibling perspective and what you found helpful when you were younger. Did you feel any resentment? And what's your role with your adult brother now living with autism?
We called it fair not equal in our household, which I think is very, very similar.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think actually one of the questions that I sort of had on here relates to it a little bit. I think it makes a big difference in terms of the family dynamics and the siblings, what the age and stage is of everyone. So yeah. I'm the oldest of 3, and then it's my sister, and then our brother who has autism. So he's the youngest. So
I thought he was the oldest.
Yeah, of your situation, which I think is interesting, and I think it's a little bit more natural in a way for my sister and I to care for him and baby him.
Right, he was your baby.
Naturally, the baby brother. If he was the older brother, I think it looks a little bit different, and I think it depends. But I think the support and the mirroring of behaviors from siblings in general is so important, and it's a different sounding board that you get from your siblings than you get from your parents. And I think that if they're lucky enough to have that in their life, it definitely means a lot.
I love that. And you know what, to your point, another thing I felt like I don't know if your parents felt this way, but like as he was my firstborn, so I was a little bit like not sure what to expect. Whereas I think if it had been my last, I'd been like, whoa, I would have been like, hey, what's up, right away. Although your parents may have done that, oh, it's a boy. Because sometimes people are doing that, oh, it's a boy, they speak later, or it's a boy, they toilet train later, that sort of thing. So your parents, because they'd had 2 girls, may have been, oh, it's a boy, they're going to be different anyway. But I did feel like I would have been better equipped if it had been a latter born, not a firstborn.
Oh, I think there's something to be said to that for sure.
Yeah.
We have a question that came in here, or actually it might just be a message.
Okay.
Let's see. My brother is almost 30, and I saw the opposite approach of what you took. This is directed towards your story, Julie, as my mother was extremely protective of him and of what people did and how they reacted to him. I think it's very important to point out that parents need parents for support, just like you said, and sometimes they need to do the hard stuff, much like you're sharing, so that it is hard at the beginning and it can get easier over time. My brother has never reached his potential and still lives at home, but has finally found his voice. But then long ago, to your point, resources and support were much more limited.
It's true, honestly, and I can say, thank you for that comment, because I remember when Mac was diagnosed, I felt like it was on the cusp of even feeling like I'm glad he hadn't been born 2 years earlier. Like I felt like so much information was kind of coming out at that time, and people were getting a little bit more like, hey, what's going on? Whereas I think like the age difference, like your brother being 30 to my son being 20, a lot happened in that time. And also I think there, at that time, like I think for your mom, like that generation too, sometimes there was like this weird shame around disability too. And also this can happen very much culturally, where different cultures treat disabilities, or people living with disabilities differently. And there can be this shame and this hiding that goes with it, which is super unfortunate because it doesn't, because obviously there should be no shame around this. But those were the times. And I think, you know, that I'm so glad to hear your brother found his voice. And it is interesting to think, had he had access to the things maybe my guy did, how different things might look now. I'm sure your mom did an awesome job with what she knew and her resources and what she could. But that's the thing, like we only know what we know, right? And we know better, we do better. But if we don't, and we don't have the support, and at that time too, not as many kids were being diagnosed, so there wasn't as much support out there. There weren't as many parents. She couldn't hop on a Facebook group. She couldn't hop on a Zoom call, you know? So different times for sure. And also like, I'm like the moms of the past, like it was awful. I mean, the whole refrigerator mother syndrome thing, like people used to say that mothers caused this because they were cold with their kids and that's why their kids didn't respond to them. And I mean, it was mothers have traditionally gotten the brunt of all of the things, but this one was the worst. The refrigerator mother theory back in the day was devastating to moms trying to raise their children with autism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and then so one other question that I thought of for a lot of the kids and company parents that may be listening to this that have the young kids in the toddler preschool age group, which is generally I think when we see a lot of what you referred to as flapping, that was really common in my
the toe walking, right? Tiptoe. Yeah.
And so I'm wondering what sort of exact advice you might have for redirecting that behavior specifically, sort of when it's just starting out.
Okay, so let's say it's a flapping. So maybe something, and I know they get excited or there's something that makes them flap, like say there's something on TV or a certain show. I would probably remove the thing. If something makes them excitable and makes them flap, I would remove that. I never would say, don't flap, don't give a word, don't give attention to the behavior at all. Catch them in the absence of the flapping. So if they're sitting nicely, be like, I love your cool hands, here, have a Smartie. I love when you have cool, quiet hands. So give a name and reward the behavior in its absence. And if they're flapping, I'd be like, hey bud, let's go sit down and watch this. I'd just be like, let's have nice cool hands. Like, no, I wouldn't say nice cool hands. Once they were cool, then I would be like, I love your quiet hands, and then reward it. So that's what I would do definitely so I would remove what maybe triggers the stim. I would catch them in the absence of the behavior, and then I would physically redirect the stim.
Perfect. I think that's great. Okay, I think that might be all then that we had today. Thank you so much, Julie.
Christy,
that was fantastic.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wants, I've blogged a lot about this journey. If you go to Mabels Labels, there's our blog there. You can search up my stuff. I'm on Instagram at cole.julie, also at Mabels Labels, Twitter at Julie Cole. Yeah, Mabels has a huge Facebook community. We have over 200,000 Facebook fans. Obviously, autism is very close to our heart. So please stay connected. If you have any questions, follow up. I know, Christy, you're going to have this living on your website, correct?
Yep, on our family resource page, the recording will live. Yeah.
Awesome. And just thanks for having me on to talk about this really important issue during Autism Awareness Month. And, you know, I love Kids & Co. And everybody stay safe. And again, mamas, I'm feeling you. If you're at home with those kids and on your own and going crazy, I know there's just not enough wine. I know that. Take care.
Thank you, Julie. Have a great day, everyone.